Hey guys, welcome to the second half of Lesson 8. This week we're going to be talking more about how you can really go about distinguishing between the various types of minor scales when you're looking at them on a piece of paper. I made charts which are the reading for this week, so you might want to grab those out and follow along as we're doing this video. When you're asked to identify a scale and determine what kind of scale it is, the first thing you're going to want to ask yourself is whether or not it has a key signature. So I'm going to take a look at this chart that deals with scales that have a key signature. Notice that the first step, according to this chart, is to find the major key. So our key signature is 1 flat. And we know our key signatures. We know that the key signature with 1 flat is F major. And in F major, F is Do. So then our first question to ask ourselves is, which solfege syllable does the scale begin on? We just decided that F is Do, but our scale begins down here on D. We can count down Do, Ti, La. So we're going to follow this track because our scale begins on La. The next question, according to our chart, is, are there any accidentals outside of the key signature? So we're going to scan and see that, oh, C sharp, that's not in this key signature. So we're going to follow to yes, there are accidentals outside of the key signature. And then finally, we're going to ask ourselves if the accidentals stay the same on the way up and the way down. So on the way up, we have a C sharp, and then on the way down, we also have a C sharp. So we're going to go to yes, and that tells us that this scale is a harmonic minor scale. And then finally, we'll remember that scales are always named by their first and last note. So since our first note is D, this is specifically the D harmonic minor scale. Here's another scale. Once again, we're going to check and see, oh look, we do have a key signature. So that means we're going to need to think about the chart that refers to scales that have a key signature. And we're going to find our major key. We have 1 sharp in our key signature, which is the key for G major. So then we have to decide whether our scale starts on Do or La. And we're in G major and the scale starts on G. So we know our scale begins on Do, and that is the simplest of the paths because the major scale is the only one that begins on Do. So that makes this scale a G major scale. Here's another example with a key signature. This time we have 2 sharps, which is the key signature for D major. So D would be Do. Our scale does not begin on D, it begins on B, which is La. So we're going to follow that path. And we're going to ask, are there any accidentals outside of this key signature? And find that there are, in fact, lots of accidentals outside of the key signature. So then our next question is, are the accidentals the same on the way up as they are on the way down? And on the way up, we have G sharp and A sharp, but on the way down, we've got A natural and G natural. So our answer is no, the accidentals are not the same on the way up as they are on the way down, which makes this the melodic minor scale. And since it begins and ends on B, this specifically is B melodic minor. Here we have yet another example. We've got 1 sharp in our key signature, which is the key for G major. We're going to ask ourselves whether our scale begins on Do or La. And since it starts on E and we're in G major, it does not begin on Do because G is Do. So we must begin on La. Then we're going to ask ourselves, are there any accidentals outside of the key signature? And we're going to scan and see, nope, there are no extra accidentals in this scale, which means that this is a natural minor scale. And since our first note is E, this is in fact E natural minor. Here we have a scale that does not have a key signature. So that means that we're going to be looking at a different chart that talks about scales that don't have a key signature. This time, instead of asking about what the major key is, we're going to see what kind of steps exist between the first 3 notes. And this is because the difference between a major scale and a minor scale lies in the pattern of whole steps and half steps. So remember that a major scale, the pattern of whole steps and half steps is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. But a minor scale is whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. So notice that in the major scale we have 2 whole steps at the beginning, but in the minor scale we have a whole and then a half. So we don't necessarily have to check all of these other steps to be able to determine whether it's major or minor. So pull up your keyboard, and we're going to look at our first 2 notes. We've got E and we've got F sharp, and that is a whole step. So we're going to come back down here and say our first step is a whole step. Then we're going to look at our second step, which is F sharp to G, and that is a half step. So that tells us, as we follow this path, whole half, that this is one of the kinds of minor scales. The next question that we should ask ourselves is whether the scale is the same on the way up as it is on the way down. And we're going to scan and see, yep, the way down is a perfect mirror image of the way up. So then we have to go to our next question. What kind of step exists between the top 2 notes? That means we're looking at the distance between these 2 notes. So we've got D and E, and that is a whole step. So we're going to follow this path, and we'll see that that makes it a natural minor scale. This natural minor has this whole step up at the top. And since the first note is E, that makes this E natural minor. Here again we've got a scale without a key signature. So we're going to be looking at the pattern of whole steps and half steps between the first 3 notes. F to G is a whole step. And then we've got G to A flat, which is a half step. So we're going to follow this, and then we have to ask ourselves, is this scale the same on the way up as it is on the way down? We're going to look. Yes, it is. So then our last question is, what kind of step exists between the top 2 notes? So from E to F. We're going to see over here, E to F is a half step. So that makes this a harmonic minor scale. And since our first note is F, this is the F harmonic minor scale. Here's another scale without a key signature. We're going to check the interval between the first 2 notes, which is F to G. That is a whole step. Then we're going to check the next step, which is G to A. That is another whole step, which means that this is a major scale because the first 2 steps are whole, whole. And the major scale is the only one that follows that pattern. And our first note is F, so this is F major. And one more example without a key signature. We're going to take a look at our first 2 notes. E flat to F is a whole step. F to G flat is a half step. So following this path, it's one of the minor scales. Then we ask ourselves, is the scale the same on the way up as it is on the way down? We're going to look and see, oh, nope, there's a difference here. Here we have C natural and D natural, and on the way down we have D flat and C flat. So since it's not the same on the way up as it is on the way down, that is the melodic minor scale, which is the only one different on the way up from the way down. And remembering, of course, to include the accidental. Our first note is E flat, so this is E flat melodic minor. So hopefully that has cleared up the process a little bit. As always, let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them.